Welcome to the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast, hosted by your favourite duo, Stephen and Charlene. They're here to help you transform your mindset and create a positive outlook on life. Are you tired of feeling stuck and unfulfilled? Are you ready to take control of your thoughts and emotions and rewrite your story? Well, you're in the right place. They will be sharing inspiring stories, practical tips, and expert advice to help you on your journey to a better you. You'll learn how to let go of negative self-talk, embrace your strengths, and focus on the good things in life. Each episode will be joined by amazing guests who have rewritten their own life stories and are now living their best lives. From successful entrepreneurs to accomplished athletes, we'll bring you stories of resilience, courage, and triumph. So grab a cup of coffee, get cozy, and get ready to be inspired. Tune in every week for a new episode of the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Let's rewrite our stories together and make every day count.
In today's episode, we interview Brett Smith. Brett grew up in Sydney and came from a blue-collar working-class family. As a kid, he played a lot of rugby league as well as boxing until he was about 17. Brett's life went off the rails at around age 16, and he spent his 19th birthday in a rehabilitation clinic for substance and alcohol abuse. Join us as he recounts the story.
Before we get started, we want to remind you that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are their own and do not represent the views of any organisation or entity. Additionally, any information presented should not be taken as legal, medical, or financial advice. Always consult with a licensed professional in the respective field for any advice or guidance. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic and learn how to transform our lives through positive thinking and taking control of our stories. Thanks for joining us.
Before we begin, we want to give you a heads up. We may be discussing some sensitive and personal topics that might bring up some strong emotions or discomfort. Our goal is to create a safe and supportive space, but we know that everyone's experiences and triggers are different. If you start feeling overwhelmed or triggered during an episode, remember to prioritize your well-being. It's totally okay to hit pause and take a breath. Your self-care is important, and looking after your mental and emotional health should always come first. If you ever need extra support, we encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional or someone you trust. You're not alone, and there are resources available to help you on your personal journey. Thank you for joining us on this incredible ride with the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Together we'll navigate life's challenges and rewrite our narratives with strength and resilience.
Hey everyone, it's Stephen and Charlene from Rewrite Your Life Story. And today we're really excited. We've got Brett Smith on the podcast today. Brett has a really amazing story from athlete to construction to now going on a new journey. Well, not so new, but actually launching his own coaching business. So Brett, how are you today?
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're really excited, Brett. Now, Brett, when I was reading about you and actually chatting a bit with you, you have an amazing story, but it has so many aspects to it. And I really want to not waste time and dive into the aspects of your story, but tell us a little bit about you and growing up. I think I remember by speaking to you, you grew up in the Southern Shire of Sydney, and then you went into boxing. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, it's a colourful little journey. It's been, I suppose, a bit of a wild journey, but I grew up, you're right, in the Southern Shire. I travelled extensively overseas. When someone asked where you're from, you'd always just say Cronulla because it was the only sort of place they might know. I've been to Sydney side. I grew up in the Southern Shire. I had a great upbringing. I got two beautiful parents who I still see a lot to this day. Went to Hooligan High School. But yeah, at a very young age, I was exposed to, through no one's fault other than my own, I guess. There was trouble to be had at that point in my life. I would definitely dig it out and loved a good time, and I've always been a rat bag. Still am a rat bag, but in, I guess, different ways now. But yeah, I ended up pretty heavily involved with various substance abuse, and I suppose we did touch on, but I don't like to stigma the word addiction. But yeah, for sure, at that point in my life, addiction was rife. I sort of grabbed onto belief systems and ran the stories that addiction was pretty rife through my father's side of the family and my mother's in different parts as well. And I really grabbed that part of the story and I guess resonated with it at a young age. And at 14, 15, I was on the streets doing things I just shouldn't have been. And this went on for years and years. And then, to be honest, by 18, I more or less had a kind of nervous breakdown or just a breakdown from the constant substance abuse, I suppose you'd say. I remember stumbling into the then manager of a large electrical corporation. He was very good to me. And anyway, they put me into a detox rehabilitation centre in Royal North Shore Hospital. I'll never forget it. And I had my 90th birthday in there. So that's kind of the darkest part of my story, I guess you'd say. I don't dwell on it these days, but I'm very proud of where I come from. I don't hide or feel any shame amongst that. I definitely don't really go into the stories too deeply because I know that at some stage in this journey, my kids are going to end up listening. And although I'll help them navigate whatever pops up for them, there's no need to encourage what we got up to back then. But yeah, man, come out of rehab at 19 and life's very difficult and challenging at 19, particularly in the Shire, trying to live a life of sobriety. Like it was actually impossible. And we've spoken enough pre-chats and via email and whatnot to know what your backgrounds and what you guys do as a profession. And there was no conversation around mental health in the late 90s. It just didn't exist, so you kind of battle those battles alone. And the Shire has a stigma around it for a reason. There's a lot of darkness energetically, I feel, in the Shire still to this day. I don't know where it comes from, whether it's generational trauma, whether it be trauma to land, whatever it is, it has a weight to it that I even still feel when I go back there now. But yeah, fast forward till I was 21 and I really couldn't wait to leave the country. I travelled extensively and I think I was trying to escape that space because I just needed to. And I learned once I hit the road and I travelled extensively for years and I kind of learned that there's no escaping yourself. And that's what the reality comes down to. And as we get further along my journey, and because I'm not there yet, when I go back in time, I'm definitely not there. But, as you go further along the journey, it all comes back to yourself. And yeah, I think the first time I really felt like I'd come of age, I landed in Egypt. I'd probably been to 10 or 15 countries by this stage, so I was pretty well travelled. But I'd always felt that everywhere I was, there was a Shire lad or a Shire lass, like you travel halfway across the planet and you still haven't escaped the people you went to school with. Or when I got to Egypt, I definitely found myself. And it was kind of, I can still see that as a pivotal change in my being, that point where the first time in your life you kind of find yourself. And I went head first into scuba diving, got very, very passionate about diving, become a scuba diving instructor. And I taught there extensively. I was there for a year and a half and I got right into tech diving. So I think I touched on diving to the depths. And I thought my maximum dive, you talk about resilience or you talk about persistence or high expectations of yourself. That was probably the beginning of that in a lot of ways. You learn to test yourself in those kind of depths. So my deepest dive I thought was 90 metres on air, which is a solid dive for anyone that knows diving. And yeah, actually we had a reunion recently and I spoke to my diving mentor, Francois. He was on the dive trip in the Maldives and he informed me that it was definitely 95. So I was only 5 metres off that 100 metre mark, which was, anyway, that's where that's at. I travelled 4 years. I travelled a lot of countries. I had a lot of fun. But when I got back to Australia, I went straight to the Sunshine Coast. I flew back in after a year and a half in Egypt to Cronulla, right amongst the Cronullarites. It was a really strange place to be energetically after spending a year and a half in Egypt. It was I couldn't wait to get out, to be honest, and I went straight to the Sunshine Coast. And I've been here ever since. And at about 25, maybe 26, I found myself reeling right back to where I'd left at 19 and realised I hadn't dealt with myself at all, but I'd really, escaped a lot of it. I had a bit of a messy breakup with a woman that I'd bought a property with. It was nobody's fault. It was just different times, different places. But when we split, I had very few friends and close relationships. That I hadn't dealt with that addiction at all, that I really kind of ran from it. And I got myself back into a pretty dark place where I had to make a choice. And I literally flipped that coin about whether to go back to rehab or something else. But boxing had been there for me through all the kind of toughest challenges in my life. I started boxing when I was 12 or 13, supplement PCYC. under a great coach named Fred Lenthal, or nicknamed Skip. But yeah, when I snapped my leg in the 14s as a footy player in the grand final, the last 2 minutes to go, I snapped my leg. And that's at that age I realised I was probably getting beyond being too small for footy, but I was too small. So I went back to boxing then. I went back to boxing when I was 17 and off the rails. And I went to boxing. I found a gym in London when I was just always been there for me. And when I flipped that coin, that was what I needed to do. And it was another really pivotal time in my life, and boxing for that reason. I still say to this day, saving. I'm still heavily involved in different ways. But yeah, that's how I ended up in boxing.
You say that you're still involved. Like, tell us a bit more about your boxing career, where it took you. Because I can see, and for our viewers, I can see a belt, one of those boxing belts on your back mantelpiece there as we're speaking. So obviously you've won a few tournaments. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no problem. So I started, you consider, reasonably late. I mean, in box, like I said, off and on for a lot of years. But at 26, I come back pretty angry, pretty dark, in a pretty bad way mentally. Like I've said previously, there was no support around mental health in the late 90s. And although it was 2008, maybe 7, I hadn't learned any tools to manage myself at that point. But I went back to boxing. I think I had 11 amateur fights in a pretty short concession, like in a 10 or 11-month period. I won 9 of them. I got shortchanged in what I thought was an unfair decision for a state title. But anyone that knows boxing, that's an unfair decision, happens every other day. So there's no judges there. But yeah, we decided quickly to turn pro. I turned pro pretty raw, pretty wild as a fighter. I worked harder than most people in the gym, and I probably wasn't known for my skill set per se, particularly in the early days, but I worked harder than anyone I knew. So anyway, I went on. I had 22 pro fights. I won 19 of them. I had 2 losses and a draw. I won a Queensland title as a professional, an Australian title as a professional. The WBA Pan Asian or PABA belt, that's that one there. IBF Australasian, and then I won 2 minor world titles with the WBU and the WBF. So I had a great career. It gave me an identity when I didn't have one, to be honest. It helped me find myself when I needed it most. And that's why I'm always forever grateful for the sport. And I retired from boxing and I fell into coaching quicker than I needed to, quicker than I should. Before too long, I had like 12 young boxers training my front driveway, my small gym at the backyard. And I had 3 kids under 3 myself, and I just launched my first company, BWS Electrical. So I sustained it for a while, but the timing was wrong. I needed to focus on my own family and my kids, my businesses. So I stepped away from the sport about 6 or 7 years ago. About 6 years ago, I stopped coaching. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I've stepped back in a role that I love. Like I help out some young professional fighters. I always felt that that's where I belong. That's where my strongest assets was working with the pros. And like I love grassroots boxing, but there's a high functioning, high expectations, and I like working with elites. I like working with people that get the best out of themselves. And a lot of kids just aren't ready to find that in themselves yet. A lot of them are just finding a way to be healthy and do something productive with their life. So these days I do a bit of cut man work. I help in corners, and I think my main role in the corner, if I'm doing cuts, is just to bring not the person I am, often in as a person, quite high functioning, quite full on. Maybe it's more the person I bring to my home life, because my home life, I'm a very different person. My wife is probably who's a very quietly spoken person and very chilled, very opposite of me. She's probably more disciplinarian in the household, and I'm definitely more the chilled vibe. So when it comes to the corner work, it's a funny energy. I feel like my job is to do whatever my job is, whether it be making sure I stop that blood, making sure I stop the bleeding, making sure the stool's there in the corner, the ice packs on the neck. But I take everything I do very, very seriously, and I try and treat everything that I do very, very professionally. So I'm very proud of that part of my personality, that I bring 100% everything I do. So I try and do all the little things right in the corner, but I do try and just bring a real strong sense of relaxation and just a positive, chilled vibe, so the coaches can go about their business and given the information that they need. So my job is to get those kids breathing, get them relaxed so they can take on board whatever they need to be told, So that's me cut man gig, I suppose you'd say. I help out a local gym in Beerwah called Hinterland Boxing Club, and I just love it there. Steve Pitt's head coach. 2 very different people. Like when I talk about me as a more of an inside fighter, in your face, don't let you breathe, like just smother you with volume. And Steve's, I don't know how tall he is, but he's 6 foot and a lot more. Like he's a big, tall guy. He's always fought long. He's a long, rangy heavyweight. So I'd like to think we kind of complement each other a fair bit. And so he brings me in a little bit to help out with that inside work, the clinching, just the angles on the inside. And then I try and help the boys with as much performance and mindset as they want to take on and are able to absorb and want to implement. There's so many hacks and easy. I love the idea of working hard for what you got, but working smart for what you got is a really good thing to learn at any age. The earlier you can learn it, the better, because when you got an ability like myself to work hard and smart, the sky really is the limit. So I try and help that wherever I can with any athlete that I work with, to be honest. It's, performance and mindset is my jam, man. That's whether it is talking about goals and routine and action, or with professional athletes or startup, or whether it's working with the corporates, talking about culture and about the things that drive your KPIs and get your performance up there, So,
Brett, you mentioned a couple of pivotal moments in your life, and one of them was in Egypt. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What made it pivotal for you?
Yeah, like I touched on, it's the first time where I really felt alone and felt it's just me. And you know what? Looking back, I spent, and this took me the last decade to unpack through trauma, through generational trauma, through addiction, all the things you go through, and you start peeling back the layers or going in the rabbit hole of personal development or work on yourself. But I think it's the first time I found myself, and a big part of that was there was no one to validate to, there was no one to prove to, there was no one to hold a level of expectation of myself to be someone that I wasn't. I just got to be me. And that me was like this really crazy lunatic Aussie, but that's okay because it was me. I wasn't doing it for any kind of proof or acceptance. I work with a coach myself. I'm a coach, and I love, particularly in the spiritual space, and like we're working with my soul family, when we're sitting there, and she's a visual, she's a clairvoyant, she'll see, and she's like, your family, man, they're just so humorous. They're like laughing at me when I'm trying to call stuff in. I'm like, yeah, because that is me. Like, that is my soul shining through. There is a big portion of me that is humor, when I'm making everything a joke or having a laugh. A big part of that is authentically coming through, not this human experience, but it's coming through the journey before me, and it'll be there after I exit this body, So kind of off topic there a little bit, but yeah, Egypt was a pivotal time. I lived by myself, dived deep into scuba diving. I met a lot of people, a lot of Egyptians. I was that kind of that crazy Aussie Western guy, It's not your typical one. Strong. Egypt has a strong culture, a strong sense of identity. They're strong people. They're strong Muslims. They are beautiful people. And, like that energetically can be a bit of a head-on collision when you come across especially me back then. But they just took me with open arms, and it just really helped me find myself in ways that I just didn't have the tools to do prior. I just didn't have the relationships or the ability or the culture. And I love that about traveling now. That's one of my biggest things. I love traveling because I get to explore other parts of myself thanks to other cultures and nationalities. And, you get to love and respect more of yourself by learning more about them. I worked in a dive shop there. It was with a Bedouin-owned dive shop. So the Bedouins are indigenous to Sinai, so they're not the traditional Egyptians. They're before the Egyptians. So very, very proud people, and they just treat me like one of their own. I lived in a town called Asla, which was, I believe, now not so small, but it was I had a mud brick home, I had a drop toilet, I lived with street children stumbling past your door, and I had a cat that moved in and refused to leave my house, which I called Badra, because that in Arabic means bugger off, because that barn door with a big gap under it, and you just come in every night and stay with me. And yeah, it was just wasn't like traveling I'd experienced prior. That's real traveling. That's learning culture. That's learning about yourself thanks to another side of the globe versus traveling with the same people you went to school with. That's where I found myself for the first time. Found myself many times since, but that was a really key moment in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. You've come a long way from, you did your sports, you did your travel, then you have a very successful construction company. What made you make the shift from being a professional athlete to starting a construction company?
Well, I'm sure this is a baited question because I'm sure you guys being great coaches and doing what you do and interviewing who you interview, there's a massive parallel between sports, particularly people that want to compete at the high level and professionally. Anyone that can see in sport, and this is one message I'd love to get out, particularly to athletes who think there's nothing after their sport. And that's all you think until the music stops. And that music does stop, and it stops pretty hard and pretty fast. And all of a sudden, you don't really have an identity or you don't really know who you are. And it happened to me. I won a WVU and a WVF world title in Brisbane. I didn't win a WBC world title in Las Vegas, but I reached for the stars and I'd like to think I got as far as I was physically capable at that age and that period of my life. So I'm very proud of just because I dug in, I really gave it all that I had. And business has a real parallel to that. If you can succeed in sport, you just need to find your why and how in business, and you can transition because those same high functioning. How many people you think have ADHD and ADD and whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to diagnose it with as a professional sportsman? We are doubled down on super critical, super high functioning, work harder than the rest. Like you just can't teach that. You can teach some of it. As a coach, I'm learning you can teach some of it, but a lot of it's innate, like that super critical self. That OCD, just the compulsion to be the best, the compulsion to just be better every day, get up before the rest, run in the dark. Those are things that I built my electrical business off. I just learned if I wanted to succeed in boxing, I had to put bums on seats. I learned in business if I wanted to succeed, I had to treat my clients like they were my supporters in a boxing match, and I had to sell them a product of value that they wanted, i.e. me getting punched in the face with good value to pay to come and watch. Well, me putting a new light bulb and a PowerPoint, that's literally where it started, was just knowing that I was there for more, and that I grew up on the streets of Sydney, and I won't go too deep into it, but I grew up on the streets of Sydney, and I consider that, that's as far as I'll go, but I consider my cert 3 in business was growing up on the streets and the pubs and clubs in Sydney in the late 90s, and my cert 4 in business was surviving the professional boxing circuit as a professional fighter. So that's my education in business. I left school at 15, so I didn't have an education per se. But yeah, like business for me, I got to a point where I was with a fantastic electrical company, Southern Australia, and I just wasn't succeeding. I wasn't moving up the ladder. It was a tough time in life. Post GFC, it was kind of like opportunities weren't there. Not like now. Now you can be the worst at everything and get the best job. Literally, like we can't find staff because everyone just is so entitled. But the reality was back then it was harder. And I got sick of saying if I could do it better. I was like, if you can do it better, do it yourself. Like, do what you've always done and go out there and do it. And we did. And that's exactly what we did. I quit my job. I was on 110 grand a year, which back then was a lot of money. It's probably still a decent amount of money now for most people's wages. Taryn, my wife, we'd had our 3rd child. We had 3 under 3. I had 3 mortgages, and I quit my job with no guarantees. And everyone told me how crazy I was and how mad I was. When I left, I found out months later that my own staff colleagues, my own workmates, all had bets on me and how long it would take me to fail and how long it would take to come crawling back. I do wonder what they think now. I don't hear them. It's kind of crickets in the background. You don't hear much from them about turning to a 7-figure or multiple 7 figures in a short period, And the parallels between business is unprecedented. It's very easy to see why people succeed in business because they are obsessive. They are passionate about being passionate. It's an obsession. And I've learned a lot in business, so I'm different. I have a very different view on it now, as in how I addressed myself. I would have just died in that boxing ring. I would have died just working 16-hour shifts around the clock. But as you start to scale, and I think we're up to 14 staff now, and you have to change tack. You have to do things different. And you can't coach that stuff if you don't live it. So I try and live and breathe my ways, which I will coach my ways before I coach in my programs and my routines of I meditate every morning. I read every night. I hydrate well. I eat pretty well. I exercise every day. These 1%ers, and when people ring and ask why you're going so well, it's like, well, what do you do with your life each day? And when you tell them, they're like, oh, no wonder your life's so amazing. It's like, well, what do you do? Because once you learn better, you got to be better. Once you know better, you got to be better. And once you start living that life, it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back to the mundane mediocrity of the matrix that a lot of people are, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thank you, Brett. You're in a new chapter of your life. You're rewriting your chapters again in your story, and you're launching your Conscious Hooligan coaching program. Tell us what made you get into this journey. Obviously, life has obviously played a huge part into that, but Conscious Hooligan, that's such a great name. Tell us more about what you aim to do out of this and what the next chapter involves.
Yeah, man, I'd love to because it's become my new baby. I have to say I'm nowhere near as passionate about my electrical company as I once was. And I went down the rabbit hole of personal development. It started close to 10 years ago. And I'll say his name because he's been a massive mentor, Jason Reynolds, the quantum movement. He was a massively pivotal moment again, another pivotal moment of spirit, finding self. I was actually put onto him to help a young athlete that I was coaching. And then I piggybacked onto the program, Becoming Your Authority, which is basically a route back to yourself. And it was deep, man, and it was fast, and it was like, wow. And like, I think I got sick off and on for like 2 years after that because all the stuff was leaving my body. I was working through deep level seated trauma, and it was huge. And then like a couple of years later, I kept working on myself, found people like DeMartini, found all these amazing spiritual teachers, and I got in right down the spiritual rabbit hole and got what I'd like to think is a deep connection to my authentic self, my higher self, my true self, my soul, however you want to verbalize, God, whatever you want to call it. And I did that a long time ago. And then a few years went along and I fell in and out, but really I've been pretty well practiced for like a long time now. And then I decided to become a life coach. And I think that was about 5-6 years ago. And it felt like I went completely backwards. It's like I've gone to the depths of the spirit. And then I've come back and learned things like being a hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, where I was like dealing with this surface level human stuff, which is great stuff. A lot of people need to work through that to find themselves, but I kind of went to the end and then I've come back and I've worked through. So, and this year I've got to finalize some of these programs that are outstanding because, I want to tick because I'm a completer. That's what I do. I always finish. I always complete. So the master practitioner of hypnotherapy back in about April, and I tell you, man, I was like, dude, this isn't your thing, but just arrive with an open heart. I have matured a lot, I must say, since I started my coaching journey 10 years ago. I've matured a lot. So just arrive with an open heart because you can learn something from everyone. You will gain something out of this. And it might not be that you want to be a hypnotherapist, but there'll be gold nuggets and there'll be pennies dropped. And there was. It was the best thing I ever did. And it's actually got me really inspired to practice in some hypno in different spaces, sleep, addiction for sure. It's going to be part of my 12-week. Managing yourself, I suppose you'd say, or learning about yourself, where we'll go deep into a connection of self, because anyone that's worked with addiction or more importantly on themselves realizes that addiction is just another label. I don't think it even helps the addict. I mean, it helps you get to a point, but it's not going to find you peace and happiness. Coming back to self. My programs will all be related around that. So the Conscious Hooligan came from that. So consciousness, as we all know, is a key part of everything. And when you want to start talking about connecting to spirit and connecting to your true version of you, well, if you don't know the term or understand the term conscious and consciousness, well, you're going to learn it pretty quick. So Hooligan makes sense. I'm a complete rat bag. I make no apologies for my history, for my past, for where I'm at, but I've succeeded in every domain that I've ever set my heart. Everything I've done, whether it be an addict, I was really good at that. I was one of the best. And that is one thing that I've doubled down on is just like doing everything to the best of my ability, and coaching is next. It's not a new thing. Like I said, I've been in the space 10 years. I've been in the coaching space 5. I launched the Conscious Hooligan, I think, in 2020. It's just been a passion project. It's something that I've done in the background because I love to help people. It's the word impact just come to mind then. That's going to be my legacy and the thing that I leave behind. So the reason I'm rushing my website is because when I launch it, this is being built for my kids. This is their programs they go. When I fall off the perch, I've just got to hurry up and get these programs done before I ever do. Although I'm sure I won't, because I kind of visualize myself working 50 years times. When you see your future and you can see it and you can make it tangible, that generally is what happens. So I probably won't be working at 100 for no reason other than I want to be. But the website is being built for my children. I'm building these programs to support them, whether it be addiction, whether it be I want to coach kids. It's another place where I see hypno as a really powerful product or powerful modality because kids are playful. Kids want to buy. They want to buy the story. And if you want to buy the story, hypno works each and every time. So they want in. So I want to work with kids. We coach down to Sevens netball team, the local netball team. My daughter's one of those. I help out of the boxing club with professional fighters, not kids there, but I want to build a legacy and build some impact. I mean, addiction, children, parenting, marriage. Like people might think, who do you think you are to be coaching parenting? Well, I've got 4, man. I've got 4 kids and I've got 3 businesses and I sleep in my bed every night. I really miss a game. I really miss a school concert. So I really think I can help people bring the best out of themselves and performance and mindset. That's my jam. So it's not performance and mindset necessarily to the elites or the corporates here, that they're going to bring some financial value to my business so that I can bring genuine value and love to the industry and help those people. Everyone needs to be on point with their performance and mindset. If you want to be a parent, you want to be the best parent you can be. We want to be your performance and mindset wants to be around parenting. So I can help with that. You know what I mean? Like parenting, kids, addiction, sport, startup business, scaling business, corporates. You know what I mean? Like there's a big market for what I've done and who I can help. So, but most importantly, these programs that I'm going to launch are going to be for my kids. And anyone that knows me knows that they are the most important thing in my life. So if I launch these things that are good enough for my kids, what does that mean for you? Like that is jam. That is just full of my heart and soul. And like anyone that knows me, I'm very, very passionate. I'm very driven. And if I want to do something like provide value, I'm going to do it and you're going to gain from it. And that could be for you or not for you. I think we had the chat before we started. Like I may not resonate with a lot of people's different vibes. Like I'm high vibe, I'm high intensity, I'm super passionate. For the more chilled, cool, calm, collected dude, they might want a cool, calm, collected coach. That's perfectly okay as well. But if you want the juice, they're going to come to me. So, yeah.
But what role have mentors played in your journey?
Massive. I've been blessed. I think I had self-made on my description in LinkedIn because it's like a click where you can go self-made. Anyone that says they're self-made is kidding themselves because anyone that's succeeded has had brilliant mentors or people to match, like people to model off, people to look up to, people to bounce off. And I look at my father as a really strong mentor, and for reasons that might not be what people might think who know me or know my dad. Like dad was a wild man as well, and I looked up to that as a young guy, and it's probably part of what created who I was as a younger man. But as I get further along my journey, and as a father, he took a easier job so he could be part of our lives. Like that was a really important part, being a good father, being a good role model, coaching us in footy, those kind of things. And that is where I'm at right now. It's like I'm doing that because that's who I'm matching. That's who I'm modeling because that's who I looked up to. That was my mentor. So from my earliest years, my father, when I went through rehab and stuff like that, my Uncle Mal, my father's younger brother, also battled addiction. I think he's been sober 30, for maybe 40 years, a long time. Was an AA sort of guy, like, because that was a big thing then. Like, that was your only support network. Forget, like, coaching and forget mental health. Like, that was your treatment. And he was there for me when I came out of rehab, and he always checked in on me and made sure that I'm going all right, even though I'm not perfect. But, yeah, Uncle Mal, big mentor in my younger years. When I come back, I had, through my boxing journey, I had a boxing manager who never took a cent from me, managed my career, and he said to me, I will never manage another fighter again. I've given you my most valuable asset, Brett, and that's my time. And I learned a lot from that. And he was my boxing manager, never took a cent from me, and he did so much for me. His name's Stephen Edwards, and he's still, to this day, a very strong business mentor. So I refused to let him pay for lunch because he bought me so much and spoiled me so much as a young fighter coming through, trying to get on top of mortgages and staff, always working full-time in the background. But, yeah, he's been a really strong business mentor and just a mentor for life. So I treat a lot of what I do in the sporting industry, whether I'm doing cut man work or coaching people. There's very few people I take money from in that area because nobody took it from me when it was my turn and they helped me. But I do make them realise that my time is my most valuable asset. And if I'm giving it to you, I'm giving you something that means more to me than money. And if I feel like it's not appreciated, it won't be there for long, because that is a really important takeaway and something that Steve helped instill in me and still mentors me to this day with business. And then back to Jason Reynolds, a spiritual coach. He's more just a damn good friend these days. But I love that guy, and I love the fact that he took me down the deepest rabbit hole ever, and that I still haven't found one quite as deep yet. Kind of work my way back up to level stuff in a lot of ways. But yeah, that would be some of the bigger ones off the top of my head.
Awesome.
That's great. So, Brett, we usually have two questions that we ask at the end of every interview. And the first one is that what advice would you give to someone who is looking to rewrite their life story?
I think it's important to reinvent ourselves. I think it is good to reinvent yourself. When the chips are down, don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to step in. And I'm a strong believer that each time you reinvent yourself or rewrite your story, I personally feel you peel back a layer and you come one step closer to your true self. And I really feel that that is a really important takeaway. As if I could give any advice, I don't give advice. You can take or leave how I feel, but I would feel that don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Don't be afraid of what people might think. Just do it. Just do what feels deep and feels right in your heart, because you just go one step closer to your true self. And that is the goal of this experience. Is it not? Is that not the goal of this human experience, to get closer and closer to truth so you can actually live your soul's purpose on this journey? Is that not what we're here for? So that'd be a thing I'd say maybe.
Yeah, it's such a great takeaway. Yeah. So if you could go back and rewrite your life story now, what would that look like?
Just like this. I don't think the small, dumb surface stuff I'd do a bit different. If I hurt anyone out there that I've hurt on my quest for glory or my egotistical strive for the best in that part of my life, I'd like to think I'm not there yet, but I'd like to think I've worked past that. We all have those moments in this experience. We all have them. And as you get close to your true self and you start to find your soul's purpose, you start to realize you go through levels and layers in the journey. And I've definitely think I'm at the back end of the journey of success and money, the monetary lifestyle, and the proving yourself, and the ego. And I think I'm stepping into a part of how can I provide value? How can I have an impact? What can my legacy be? So I guess anyone in that part that I might have hurt or upset or misdone wrong by, please do know that I am actively giving my time and love to people so that I can rewrite my story and do the things right that I may have done wrong. If I've done them wrong, I'm sure there's people listening. I'm sure some people would listen and say, man, you're a good cat. You haven't done wrong. So, it's just all about perspective, I guess. But I wouldn't change a thing about the journey. I wouldn't change anything. Like I said, if there was anything, it would just be some impact along the way negatively to other people. I would change that for sure. But my experience, man, I'm not going anywhere, but I felt for a person tomorrow, I would not die wondering. I would not wonder if there was anything left in the engine. So I think it's really important to go all in life and just don't die wondering.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett.
So good to have you, Brett.
Brett, it's been a real privilege having you on our show tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to know more about Brett, make sure that you check out the show notes at the bottom of this show, or you can go to our website and search Brett Smith, and you'll have all his details if you want to contact Brett. Brett, once again, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to get on and have a chat about stuff. So I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Now that we've interviewed our guest, join Charlene and I as we recap today's episode. Wow, doesn't Brett have a lot of energy?
No, he's very high up there.
Yeah. And you know what? He's so right in saying that different energy levels are going to attract different people.
Yeah.
And that's so true. And good on him for recognizing that, because that's really going to impact his work and what he does into the world.
Absolutely. And that level of self-awareness is just amazing.
Yeah. I really love what he said. If you want to be successful, you have to be obsessive and passionate about being passionate. And I know, Charlene, in some of our workshops, we say that the work-life balance, the circle of life, that will get out of place sometimes. That will be unbalanced, but it's not about being balanced in every area. There are times that you have to be unbalanced in order to rewrite your story, to get what you want.
Yeah. And I think that's all part of the balance, though, because sometimes you have to accept that there are times that you're going to have to put more passion into certain aspects of your life while you're putting one other aspect to the side for a little bit until you've actually succeeded at that. And then you can give that time to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing he said, again, it was that classic line that we're hearing over and over again, that I had no more identity. And it just goes to show the danger in putting our identity into something external.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people feel that they can't do certain things or they can't move forward because their identity is set in stone. It's just who I am. That's just me now.
Yeah.
And they forget that we're actually evolving. We're growing human beings. And to set our identity in one thing is going to limit us so much.
So it really does come back to the way we view ourselves and self-love.
That's right.
And having our identity secure in who we are as humans.
That's right, rather than external factors.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it with your friends and family. Also, make sure to visit our website at www.rewriteyourlifestory.com.au to learn more about our mission, products and services. And remember, you have the power to rewrite your own life story. So go out there, face your challenges head on and create the life you've always wanted. We'll see you in the next episode.